Showers early on for Wales and southwest England, but they should fade away. For most places, dry and bright with sunny spells, but it isn't going to be warm with that northerly breeze. Temperatures in the high teens at best in the south and feeling much colder on these east coasts, on these eastern coasts with that strong and very bitter wind, actually. Now, those stiff winds will continue to bring some showers across the eastern coastal counties and across northeast Scotland as we head into the weekend. Elsewhere, the winds are a little lighter. A cold start to Saturday. Could be a touch of frost in the countryside. And then generally a fine and sunny day on Saturday. Still a few showers just getting into North Norfolk, Aberdeenshire, Caithness, Sutherland. But otherwise, it's dry and bright on Saturday with plenty of blue sky. Just a bit on the fresh side with the temperatures below average for the time of year, generally only in the mid-teens. And again, feeling colder on that east coast with a brisk wind. High pressure moves in and then dominates through the weekend, so looking dry for Sunday and Monday, but we will see a bit more cloud moving in as we go through the weekend.
It is day 2 of the lying in state of Queen Elizabeth II. And within 100 yards of this building, behind that window, you can see the crowds are going over Lambeth Bridge. I've been down there earlier. We're going to report on the atmosphere, the remarkable and really rather beautiful atmosphere in Westminster tonight. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about King Charles III. We'll try and give you the mood of our capital city this evening. But before all of that, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good evening, it's 1 minute past 7. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Queen's coffin will be laid to rest in the Royal Vault alongside her husband, the late Duke of Edinburgh. Further details have been released on the Queen's funeral next Monday. The state gun carriage of the Royal Navy will carry Her Majesty's coffin from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for the service, which starts at 11. A national 2-minute silence will be held at the end of the service just before noon. Events will then move west to Windsor, where a smaller service for close family will take place at St George's Chapel next to Windsor Castle. Downing Street has said 200 key workers and volunteers have been invited to attend the Queen's state funeral. The list of people from the Queen's birthday honours list will be joining other world leaders and dignitaries. Royal households from a select number of European countries, as well as the Emperor and Empress of Japan, have also announced plans to attend. Thousands of people have been queuing to pay their respects to the late Queen, who is lying in state in Westminster Hall. The King and royal family have expressed their gratitude for the condolence messages and tributes sent from people around the world mourning the loss of Her Majesty. The queue of people visiting the Queen's lying in state is now almost 5 miles long, but some have said they simply couldn't miss it. Members of the royal family have been in various parts of the UK today, looking at floral tributes left in the memory of the late Queen Elizabeth. The Princess Royal and her husband have been welcomed to Glasgow, where they're meeting organisations the Queen was a patron of. The Earl and Countess of Wessex have visited Manchester, where they've lit candles at the cathedral and looked at flowers left in St Anne's Square. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been at the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, where thousands of people turned up to greet them. Meanwhile, King Charles has spent the day carrying out state business at his Highgrove estate ahead of travelling to Wales tomorrow. Roger Federer has announced he's to retire from playing professional tennis, saying it's a bittersweet decision. The 20-time Grand Slam champion, who struggled with an ongoing knee issue, says he'll finish his competitive career after next week's Rod Laver Cup. The 41-year-old Swiss has thanked his family and fans for their support. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Nigel Farage.
Good evening. Tonight, I want to do my best to convey to all of you outside of central London, whether in this country or anywhere else in the world, I want to try and convey to you what the atmosphere and the mood in our capital city is like tonight. It is day 2 of Queen Elizabeth II lying in state. I have to tell you, I was out there an hour ago, walking down the line, talking to those crowds. People said, oh, I've queued for 6 hours, I've queued for 7 hours. Do you know what? Some of these people would have queued for 60 or 70 hours. What I witnessed out there earlier was the most amazing, wonderful, and in many ways, actually really rather beautiful thing. As they queue along the south of the river to go up over Lambeth Bridge, to go through the airport-style security, and then to go and pay their respects to the coffin of Queen Elizabeth there on the catafalque in that amazing, historic Westminster Hall. Here's just a snapshot of the people I spoke to just an hour ago. So it's Thursday afternoon, the second day of the lying in state, and what you're witnessing here with these lines of people is simply the most British thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Orderly, quiet, disciplined, not a single piece of litter has been put on the ground, and these people coming in their own very private, quiet way to pay their respects to the Queen. I tell you what, you look at these people, I actually feel very proud to be British, and for many of them it's a very emotional journey, but they're doing it so well and it's organised beautifully. As I've said for the last 2 days, when the government tell you the queues will be 24 hours, London will be full, please ignore them. Do everything you can to get here in the next couple of days. This is really worth doing.
Fantastic, yeah. It's
and a good,
yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, yeah. But everybody's in a good mood, sun shining. Yeah. What more could you want?
Yeah, and it's a really...
I haven't been bored. The whole 6 hours, I've not been bored at all.
Is that because they're such lovely people?
Yes, of course we are.
Including you, sir. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you very much.
I came down from Bridlington.
Did you? Long way?
Yeah.
And what was your big motivation for coming?
2. My husband's a veteran. We had to choose who would... I had to come. And have a granddaughter in Canada. And I have been teaching her about the royal family. And she's so thrilled to know that the Queen was her Queen.
Yes.
And she asked me to come and say goodbye for her. So I promised her I would.
It's, I mean, and you're expressing it, very emotional moment, isn't it?
Very, very emotional, very emotional. And I did want to add that the volunteers, I think they have been so fabulous all the way around. Keep smiling, they've been wonderful.
Well, you know, we have respect for the Queen, for her unrelenting service to this country. Even though I'm not a British citizen, but I have lived here. And just to show and pay our respects.
And are you from a Commonwealth country?
Yes.
And this matters, doesn't it? I mean, she wasn't just the Queen of this country, the head of the Commonwealth. Nearly 2.5 billion people in it. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Icon.
Icon. What, a British icon, a global icon?
Global.
Do you know what? I think you're right. She is global, isn't she?
Yeah, she's the head of the Commonwealth.
It's a wonderful atmosphere, very calm, people patiently queuing, waiting in line to pay our respects to Her Majesty the Queen.
Is this not the best of British?
Absolutely.
I think this just sums up Great Britain, a day like today. You know, everyone's together. I've met 4 people today, and we're almost like lifelong friends now.
Yeah.
We've already exchanged names and addresses. I'm hoping to go to Lanzarote because they live in Lanzarote. but it is jovial. There's a lot of laughter, a lot of fun.
Say, it'll change.
It'll change once we get over the other side of the bridge.
And clearly, so you served for a very long time.
42 years in the Royal Navy. Left in February last year.
Goodness me.
And I felt it was my duty to turn up here one of these days. And so today I thought would be the best day. Obviously the weekend I think will be exceptionally busy. Having just heard from some guys, it's probably about 9 hours back to the back of the queue now.
Yeah, it's 4.5, 5 miles now, the queue.
Yeah, no, it's just my duty to be here today.
Well, that magnificent naval veteran, 42 years of service, said he simply had to be there. But as he said, the slightly jovial, a bit understated, but slightly jovial, happy mood of a Sunday afternoon walk that we saw on the South Bank becomes very different as you see, those of you watching on television, these live shots as those people make it to far past the coffin of the Queen, and it all becomes very much more sombre and very much more serious, as indeed it should. But this story of people queuing, as we say at the moment, we think the queue is about 9 hours and it's going to go on. And you know what? If it went on for a month, I doubt the queue at any point would stop. Let's go back to GB News reporter Paul Hawkins, who is down there just beneath Lambeth Bridge, not 100 yards away from where I'm speaking to you in this studio. Paul.
Yeah, hi Nigel. We think the queue at the moment about 4.9 miles long. That's the latest from the DCMS, and the wait time is about 8.5 hours. It was about 8 hours half an hour ago. It's just gone up by half an hour. We're going to stop and see if we can talk to some people in the crowd, see if we can find out where people have come from. Excuse me, how far away have you come?
She's come further than me.
All right. You come from Chester?
Yes.
Wow. And how long have you been waiting?
Since 2 o'clock.
Okay. And how are you feeling?
Fine, I think it's been organised quite well. The queues move quite quickly. It's been okay.
Yeah. And why do you feel it was so important to make that journey?
Because she's been serving for 70 years, been a great person, great monarch, and it's a moment in history, isn't it? An end of an era, so I want to be part of it.
Yeah. What about you, ma'am? How far have you come?
I'm just in Surrey, so I'm about half an hour on the train.
Okay.
So not far.
Not too far. Not too far then. And anything else you'd like to add to what your friend has said, which is why you're being it, other than just the longevity of her service?
I just think there's something as well about sort of a woman in leadership. We're not going to see that now for the next 3 generations. I think the UK in particular is used to seeing a stoic woman in charge, and we're not going to see that for a long time. And I think that's been very powerful, probably more powerful than we might realise. So,
yeah. How's the queuing experience been for you?
It's been lovely. We've moved the entire time, which I think has surprised us until now. But we're at the kind of crunch point now, I think. But it's been really easy. We've all been chatting. It's been a very light atmosphere, which is nice.
Did you two know each other before?
No.
Oh, so you're queue friends.
We're queue friends, and we've got another...
Yes, my daughter's in the waiting down there.
She's down there, and there's an American student we've been talking to.
Yeah.
So it's actually been very multicultural as well, which has surprised us, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. There you go. Just a little flavour of the distance that people have travelled. And as you know yourself, Nigel, people have been coming. You met people from Mauritius earlier today, so that's just people have been coming from all over the world and all over the UK, but pretty much for a similar reason, for the love of the Queen.
No, absolutely. And Paul, thank you very much indeed. We're going to end the programme coming back to you on these queues, these lovely people, these beautiful people. This absolutely is the best of Britain, the best of British people. I'm loving seeing it. It absolutely restores my faith in the country. My challenge to you, Mr. Hawkins, between now and the top of the hour when the show closes, is find the people that have travelled the furthest distance or spent the most time doing it. So I'll leave that with you and come back to you 2 minutes before the top of the hour. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, joining me is Rafe Hadel-Mandu, constitutional expert, fixture now on GB News, I think, through all these proceedings, a man of huge knowledge. Now, I'm saying to the audience at home, this is extraordinary, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's amazing. I remember myself being in the queue for Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 2003. My father queued over that bridge for Winston Churchill in 1965. This feels extraordinary. In historical terms, is it?
Well, we have a set playbook for state funerals. As you say, the last state funeral was, in fact, Winston Churchill's in 1965. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, had a royal ceremonial funeral, which is slightly different to a state funeral, and I can always discuss that if you wish.
But still we had the catafalque.
Well, we still had the only difference between a state funeral and a ceremonial funeral is that the Earl Marshal organises a state funeral and the coronation, and also the gun carriage on which the coffin is carried is pulled by horses in a ceremonial funeral, as opposed to naval ratings in a state funeral. But apart from that, there is really no distinction. But this is actually really is remarkable because, the Britain we were all told is long dead and gone is actually alive and well and is visible just outside that window. And how fitting, I think, that we're going to have the longest queue in history for the longest reign in history. A fitting tribute to Her Majesty. And that's why I think the Earl Marshal was quite correct not to have this funeral take place at St George's Chapel, Windsor, which is usually where the sovereigns always have their funeral service. Instead, it's going to be at Westminster Abbey. The first funeral of a sovereign at Westminster Abbey since 1760, with King George II, who was the last king also to be buried there. Very important, you can have 2,000 people there. We're going to have 500 dignitaries there, much larger than the 800 who will be present at St George's later on, when their final committal.
Yes, and it gives more chance for representation. And I'm very pleased to say that friend of this show, Steve Melnikov, who's about to become 103, he has been invited as one of the representatives of the American forces in World War II, and I hope to get him on the programme on Monday. So, yeah, every Victoria Cross holder has been invited. Every George Cross holder has been invited. So there is a big symbolism. A lot of it, of course, is around World War II, and it's worth mentioning that today is the 15th of September. It is Battle of Britain Day, something the Queen herself absolutely would have observed, and I hope some people at home
it's also
do the same.
Today would also have been the 100th birthday of Lady Soames, Winston Churchill's daughter.
Oh, would it?
Who I actually got to know very well in her later years when I was her escort to various events. And she and the Queen, and I suppose Dame Vera Lynn, all gone now. The last three links that we had to Churchill and to the Second World War. But just a reminder that the Queen's life is more than just the 70 years of her reign. I mean, it goes back to 1945.
Yeah, direct links. Obviously, there are Winston Churchill's grandchildren are still around.
But in terms of in terms of the national public connections that we have, very much the case. And you know, why are we doing all this? Why does this matter? You know, Americans and others may say, "Gosh, why is there so much bother?" Well, the disadvantage of having the world's oldest unbroken constitution is that we don't have an annual Independence Day to celebrate. We don't have an annual revolution like the French and Bastille Day to celebrate. Well, so we don't have many chances to come together as a nation. And so for us, the monarchy is actually the focal point of patriotism. The monarchy provides those relatively rare occasions when the nation can really build some sort of national bond, a connection. National identities get forged through these events. And so for monarchies, jubilees, coronations, weddings, the good times, but the bad times of funerals provide those chances for us to unite as a people.
But this is different. You know, I've seen the jubilees and all of those things, but somehow this is different. I would postulate that what is happening over the course of this, and it's now exactly a week. The announcement of the Queen's death came at 6:30 last Thursday. We're exactly a week into this. And I would say to you, we're actually learning for the first time as a country what a constitutional monarchy actually is.
Well, you're exactly right. This has been a lesson in history. You know, unlike, say, the American Constitution, which is a piece of paper behind glass in the Library of Congress, we have a living constitution. The monarch is the living embodiment of that constitution and of that history that goes to Magna Carta and to William the Conqueror and to King Alfred. And we're actually seeing the smooth transition of power, televising the Accession Council, seeing the proclamations that take place. All of this is actually history and the Constitution being played before our eyes like a theatre set.
It's astonishing. History suddenly is very fashionable. Final thought, Rafe, on Monday, on the funeral and the sort of global significance of that event.
Well, we have to remember, this is not just a British event, and it's not just a Commonwealth event. We're talking about a global figure, the most photographed, most represented figure in human history, somebody who epitomises so much that is truly noble in the human spirit, and a real global figure, the second longest reigning sovereign in world history after Louis XIV. This is an event which is of national and international importance.
Yeah, no, it really is. And who knows how many people are going to watch those pictures on global television. Estimates of 3 billion or 3.5 billion, or whatever it may be. And Rafe, please come back and join us on Monday. And let's look at that funeral service and the impact that it's had. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I've talked very much about unity, about the country being together, about the extraordinary thing that Charles already has a 73% approval rating, and his disapproval rating, his strong or very strong disapproval rating, is literally 5%. So there is great unity. But there are people out there who have protested. There were one or two people in Edinburgh who held up placards. Someone shouted a bit of abuse at Prince Andrew. And we have to think very carefully how we deal with this. Because we are a country, above all, that is a constitutional monarchy and a democracy, and therefore it is right and proper people are allowed peacefully to give their opinions. But you have to ask yourself, at a time of national mourning, which is what we're going through, whether it makes sense for 50 Just Stop Oil protesters today to go to the Kingsbury depot and to lie down on the road, prompting much anger. You know, drivers saying, get these idiots out of the way. A huge cost, of course, in policing time. Some there in that protest boasting that they'd caused up to £200,000 worth of damage to vehicles by drilling through tyres. Is it really appropriate and right at this moment in time that protesters should do this? And indeed, they claim, Just Stop Oil, that King Charles would support their sit-in. Well, look, all of you that watch this and listen to this know I want free, open debate. There is absolutely no censorship on the Farage show at all. So Craig Scudder from Insulate Britain, one of their spokespeople, not a protester but a spokesperson, joins me. Craig, you are of course welcome. You are of course welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
No, I think it's very important we talk about this. I mean, you know, I don't want to live in a police state. I believe people have the right to protest. Of course I do. But you're there wearing a black tie. You're showing your respect for the Queen. I know Just Stop Oil are slightly separate to your organisation, but it's all the same group, really. Was it appropriate at this moment in time for 50 people at the Kingsbury depot to sit in the road?
Well, firstly, can I just say how immensely proud I am of the 51 people today. One of these protesters was a lady called Sheila Shatford, who'd never been arrested before, and she's been sent to prison today. These people are highlighting the suicide pact that our government has with the fossil fuel industry.
You are joking, Craig. The Chinese built 80 coal-fired power stations last year.
Please, Nigel, last time I came on, right, we chatted like a couple of old mates in the pub, in the green room. No, but you didn't, and you're doing it again. So let me finish.
Come on, be serious.
Let me finish. If you want to talk economics about this, there's absolutely no case for continuing to use fossil fuels. Right now, gas is 9 times more expensive than offshore wind. Offshore wind is more expensive than onshore wind and solar. 9 times more, right? If I was to get you a cab home and it was 90 quid instead of a tenner, would you kick up a stink, Nigel?
Craig, I promise you, we will, as the months and years go by, talk about wind energy and how blooming useless it is when there's an anti-cyclone sitting over Britain.
How brilliant it is, Nigel. How brilliant it is. It's the answer.
But the debate today...
The mix of renewables is the answer.
It's utterly useless with the wind doesn't blow.
Now, let me quote you something, then. Let me quote you something from the Royal Foundation.
Craig,
you want to talk about the Royals?
I'm talking to you. Right, OK. We'll debate that again. You know I will let you. You know I'll let you.
OK, so I want to talk about the Royals.
I'm asking you about a time of national mourning. Isn't it deeply disrespectful for those, as you've just corrected me, 51 people, to do what they've done?
Well, there are no greater advocates in the fight against climate change than the late Queen and the now King Charles, and even the Prince of Wales and his moonshot initiative from last year. These are people that have a deep understanding of the issues that we face. The Royal Foundation, and let me paraphrase here, says that it is now undeniable the science between and the damage we're doing to the environment and the planet, and how this decade has to be a decade of action, and how we have to act now. I wish physics would wait a week.
Is that a good reason to show disrespect?
Why is it showing disrespect, Nigel?
Well, I think actually...
Why is protesting oil and gas showing disrespect?
Have a look out of that window. Have a look out of that window. There are hundreds of thousands of people queuing all along the South Bank, very quietly, to pay their respects. This, on Monday, we will have the funeral, and then on Tuesday, normal debate and politics will return. My argument to you that it's deeply disrespectful at this moment in time for people to behave in this way.
Right, but the statement made by the royal family was, please don't shut the country down this week. I've been working on site today with a host of other people. The country hasn't shut down, but you're saying protesters have to stop what they're doing.
I think protest at this moment is inappropriate. And do you honestly think King Charles thinks
I
this
think
behaviour...
I think if you could get him on here, and he can't talk now about, you know, what he's for and against. He's got a different role to play. But I think he would be proud of these 51 people and their demand to just stop oil. Oil is killing us. Oil is killing everything we love. It will cause the breakdown of society. I don't think you're going to fare well fighting over a loaf of bread in Morrison's in a decade's time, Nigel. You know, and that's what we're headed for. We import half our food.
Of course, we should be producing our own energy. We should be producing our own food.
And wind, the price of wind doesn't go up and down, Nigel. The price of solar doesn't go up and down. All it does is go down and down and down as the technology improves.
Well, actually, because of marginal pricing, wind is now ridiculously expensive. But that's a
no, it isn't.
But that's a stupidity.
No, it isn't. In the last government auction, it was 9 times cheaper than gas. In the last government auction, 9 times cheaper.
Yeah, and it's currently priced on gas. That's the return going to the energy companies. It's mad, Craig.
It's way cheap. But listen.
Quick thought for you.
We wish physics would wait.
Quick thought for you.
We have October the 1st in Parliament Square. Come and join us.
Will you allow? And this is very important, I think. The state funeral of a woman who served this country for 70 years.
Absolutely. There won't be any protesting, as far as I'm aware, on Monday. But if people wanted to, they'd have a right to. Out of respect, I won't be protesting, and people I know won't be. But we can't wait 2 weeks, Nigel.
And would you encourage them not to?
On Monday, yeah.
Yes.
And I think everyone's on that page.
All right.
But it is the democracy we live in, Nigel.
I tell you what, and I understand that. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't sit here in the studio with you. Other broadcasters.
And may I also add, everyone I know who's involved with Insulate Britain, Just Stop Oil, there's a great deal of sympathy. And I think universally people feel that the monarch, the late Queen, did a tremendous job for the country.
What can I please say to all of you groups, eco-zealots, whatever we want to call you, please do not. And I tell you what, and this is my final point to you, if people in your movement do protest on Monday, you will do your movement huge damage. Do you understand that?
I do. And can I ask you, for I think, is it 2.5 million people who are expected to come out and
it's going to be huge.
If we could have a fraction of those people on the 1st of October at Parliament Square, because our futures are at stake here.
Well,
we've got issues already this summer. This summer, food security issues in Europe, America, Africa.
I get all of that. Now listen.
We need that passion on October the 1st at Parliament Square.
I want, from all the eco groups, from you, Craig, and others, a truce, please, until Tuesday.
You'll have it on Monday.
Normal service will be resumed. All right, thank you very much. There we are. You see, we can disagree in a civil manner, in a way. And in a way, isn't that just what the Queen actually represented? Now, tomorrow, King Charles will be going to Wales. He will. And Andrew R.T. Davies is the leader of the Welsh Conservatives in what is now known as the Welsh Parliament. Andrew, how significant is this visit to Wales by Charles and the Queen Consort tomorrow?
Well, good evening, Nigel. It's very significant, obviously, because it's the first visit Charles will be making as King of the United Kingdom. But Wales is obviously a part of the United Kingdom that the Prince, or the former Prince of Wales, knows very well through his long association with various charities and organisations, through his role as Prince of Wales, which obviously he was invested in 1968. And ultimately, I hope Cardiff and the rest of Wales turns out tomorrow, a bit like Scotland did in Northern Ireland and the rest of the country is doing in London, to show their appreciation and gratitude for the late Queen's public service, but also their support for the new King and his Queen Consort.
Yes, and of course, his investiture at Carnarvon back in 1969 was a very grand affair, and he, with the King's speech, said that Catherine and William would now become the Prince and Princess of Wales. I see there is an online petition protesting against those appointments. About 25,000 people have signed it. It's not particularly serious. But can you explain to me, Andrew, why the King is coming, but the Prince and Princess of Wales are not due in Wales tomorrow?
Well, this is about the King and Queen Consort coming to the service at Llandaff Cathedral, which will be a moment of reflection and national prayer on behalf of the nation of Wales about the late monarch's passing, and obviously coming then to the Welsh Parliament to receive a motion of condolence to the new King from Parliament about the passing of the late monarch and his mother, obviously. And then, as I understand it, he's going to Cardiff Castle to obviously meet with various people and organisations that have a strong affinity to him, and it's part of the tour of the United Kingdom that the new King has been.
Say this is being put upon us. We're being given a Prince and Princess of Wales, and we don't have any say.
Well, I would have a debate and discussion on that once the period of national mourning has been concluded after the funeral on Monday. I don't think this is an appropriate time to open that particular box of discussion. We are in a period of reflection of the late monarch. As you said earlier in your show, Nigel, it was only this time last week that we found out about the tragic news that she passed. And we want to reflect on that period that she sat on the throne and performed so many good deeds for us as a country. And also welcome the new King. There will be time to have a debate if people want to have that about the Prince and Princess of Wales. I happen to support the role that they will now undertake, as Prince William obviously is the heir to the throne, and historically whoever is heir to the throne becomes the Prince of Wales. But we live in a democracy, just listening to your previous guest, and the people should have the right of free speech. But at the end of the day, we're in a period of national mourning at the moment, and it is right that we reflect on the late Queen and also show our support for the new King.
Well, I agree with that entirely, Andrew. I do. Final thought from a Welsh perspective. The big investiture of Charles as Prince of Wales was an old tradition that was brought back by the Queen in '69. I know we've got a coronation to come. Do you think there's going to be, at some point in the next couple of years, a big investiture for William?
Well, being made Prince of Wales by the new King obviously is a role that the heir to the throne always fulfills. I look forward to meeting the Prince on his various journeys and times that he'll spend in Wales carrying out that role. Quite what the investiture would look like will be a discussion for another time. As I said, you're wearing a black tie today, Nigel. I'm wearing a black tie today. We're reflecting on the passing of a great monarch, a monarch who had made history in this country, not just through the longevity of her reign, but the transformation that happened in this country. And by the crowds outside your studio tonight, we're seeing the love and appreciation that this great country of ours shows to her, but also appreciation of the new King and the role that him and his consort will undertake going forward.
Andrew Archie-Davis, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight on GB News, and we hope the King's trip to Wales tomorrow goes very well indeed. Some of your thoughts coming in from the footage that you've seen earlier. Bob says, "Hi Nigel, I would love to be able to pay my respects to my Queen, but could not queue for up to 9 hours as I'm now 74 years old. But if I could, I would certainly have taken the knee." Well, Bob, I have to tell you, this is one thing that I would take the knee for, many other causes for which I would not. Margaret says, "Yes, peaceful protests are allowed. We're not China or Russia. But criminal damage is another thing. And doing it while our Queen lies in state, disgraceful." Yeah, I have to say, I thought that behaviour outside the terminal this morning was pretty awful, ill-timed, ill-judged at any point, let alone during a period of national mourning. Ryan says, "I think we should have an Elizabeth the Great Day every year to celebrate our late monarch." Well, there was a counter-suggestion put in the Telegraph today that maybe she should be Elizabeth the Faithful, but I think so far, among GB News viewers and listeners, Elizabeth the Great is the favourite. Keith says, "Nigel, who else in the whole world can unite and bring a country so close together like our Queen and monarchy? So proud." Keith, I promise you, those lines of people behind me, they are too enormously proud and actually quite humble in what they're coming to do. As you see them, those watching on television, filing past Queen Elizabeth's coffin. It is, yeah, that joy, that gentle joy you see on the South Bank has completely gone when you get to Westminster Hall. Keith says, Nigel, I've done that one. Alex says, the police have full powers to stop any protest if it will cause disruption or violence. They need to get a grip and stop these idiots from Stop Oil. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult balance for us to get right. You know, we do not want to be China. We don't want to be a country that stops people expressing their opinions. We allow them, within reason, to do so. But frankly, to do it in the middle of a period of national mourning is deeply, in my opinion anyway, deeply disrespectful. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of politics today for the first time in a week, and it concerns Sweden. And the reason is, I think there is a big political shift beginning to happen in Europe. It happened in Sweden last Sunday. We'll explain it to you. It will happen in Italy over the course of this month, and I believe it will roll out across the whole of Europe. The story is that Magdalena Andersson, the Swedish Prime Minister, has resigned today, and she was a centre-left Prime Minister, and something pretty remarkable has happened. Well, what is it, you may ask me? The general election that took place in Sweden last week saw a left-to-right shift, and Per Hermanrud is a political reporter at TV4. Per, welcome to the programme. We have been completely looking and talking about the death of Her Majesty the Queen, King Charles coming into place. We haven't even looked or talked about Sweden, but it does seem to be a seismic political shift. Would that be accurate?
Well, it's kind of a political earthquake here in Sweden. It's what has happened is that for the first time, the nationalistic party, Sweden Democrats, will presumably gain access to the power, the real power in Sweden, the prime minister power, and they will have it because the man to be, the opposition leader, Ulf Kristersson, is depending on their power to become the prime minister. So they presumably won't be in the government, but Ulf Kristersson will have all his power depending on their goodwill. So they decide if he can become a prime minister or not. The Sweden Democrats are the second largest party after the election, and as you said, the Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson resigned today.
Okay, and I mean, when I look at places like Malmo, which have gone from being 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I used to visit there when I worked in the commodity trading business, peaceful, nice places to be, and now we hear stories of, you know, gun violence literally every single night. Is it any surprise that there's been a shift to the right?
We've had. I used to live in Malmö. It's quite a lovely city, and I've lived in several places. And we have had, and we still have, lots of shootings and gang violence in Sweden, and it has increased since 2015. If you somewhere like that, it turned up. The statistics of the gun violence. So we're on the top, I think, in Europe in gun violence. And it is today connected to the big immigration we've had into Sweden. And I believe that the voters now voting for the Sweden Democrats, the nationalistic anti-Muslim party, they don't think that the other parties have had any answers to them. How do we stop this? And originally they were really stigmatized, and all the parties have spent years to shut them out of any influence over the politics. But as for this election, as for today, it seems like they will have access to the governmental directly into the power in Sweden.
Per, it represents a very big change, and as you called it, an earthquake. And thank you for joining us here on GB News and giving us that analysis. Now, I know the Swedish Democrats, and I know their dark past, but it was me that actually welcomed them into a group in the European Parliament. I helped make them legit, I think. So I'm joined now by Charlie Weimar's MEP. Our time briefly crossed, and he's there in the European Parliament representing the Swedish Democrats. Well, Charlie, obviously congratulations on an amazing election result. But when I talk to mainstream media, no, you've done amazingly well. When I talk to mainstream media, you are described as anti-Muslim. Is that accurate?
Anti-Islamist, yes. We don't have any problems with different religions, but if a religion turns political, we will have problem with it. If it demands parallel legislation and espouses anti-Semitism, hate against women, and so on and so forth. And all the other parties have supported organizations associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. So no wonder center-right voters were looking for us as an option with regards to that.
OK, anti-Islamist, I get the message. I get it very, very clearly. So we're about to get a new centre-right coalition in Sweden. The numbers are very, very clear. What role will your party leader, Jimmy Åkesson, play in this new government?
We will be a change watchdog. We will make sure that action is actually taken to control migration, an area where the previous government failed utterly, that we actually are starting to implement reforms to fight crime. You were mentioning gun crime. We have shootings every night in Sweden. We have 500 bombings during the last 4 years of social democratic rule of this country. We'll also make sure that Sweden starts the process to build new nuclear reactors, because we have an energy crisis in Sweden, and that's also a reason why this government fell, because it closed down 4 reactors during its reign.
Yes, I get that. But can you, as a voice in government, can you reduce the immigration levels to Sweden? And can you reverse that tide of crime that you're seeing in Malmö and elsewhere?
Actually, I think we can, because Sweden has not changed its legislation on migration as to go down to the basic requirements of EU law. There you go, EU law. But we have much more to do there to reduce pull factors when it comes to migration. We also suggest that welfare benefits should be actually connected to the fact that you are working and you're contributing to society. This has not been the case, and it has made Sweden one of the most interesting countries of destination for migrants the last 20, 30 years. When it comes to crime, we need more police. We need to raise the status of police, being a police officer. We need tougher penalties. The social democratic idea of penalties basically being a sort of therapeutic thing must be a thing of the past, you know. So there are things that can.
Well, you've got a very big job to do. You've gone from being considered to be totally on the extremes, which 30, 40 years ago you probably were. You're going to be in government, and it is, I think, a marker for where politics is going across Europe. Thank you very much indeed, Charlie, for joining us.
Thank you, Nigel.
Now, I promised you at the top of the hour we would give you a taste of what is happening in London tonight. London is the epicentre of everything. And I think it's really, really important to get an authentic London voice. Well, who could be more authentic than Charlie Mullins, the founder of Pimlico Plumbers?
Good evening,
Charlie,
Nigel.
welcome. This is an extraordinary time in our capital, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, I think everybody's in shock, and rightly, as you're just saying there, the queues out there are 4.5 miles, taking 8 hours. We've probably got 69 million people here, and probably 67 million people are I think, in support of the Queen.
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 protesters. And...
Well, there's a few pests, but well, they are, aren't they?
Yeah, but we're a free country. I mean, I had a chap on earlier.
There's a time and a place, Nigel, and
to show respect.
maybe they should just leave their little bit of unhappiness to after the procession. But I've just come back from Dubai. I've flew in tonight, and we've come back to make sure that ideally we're going along this evening to visit and see the coffin.
Yep.
And tomorrow we'll be in the procession to actually watch it. So it's something that I'd rather not be doing, but it's something I don't want to miss. I mean, she's been in power 70, 75 years, and I actually think that, that's why we're here today, because of her, because of what she's laid out for us, how she's allowed us to be a great country. And, it's a sad, sad time.
It's a sad time, and yet it's also... I thought what I saw this afternoon down there with that crowd was rather beautiful in a way. Just the British absolutely at their best, queuing politely, being nice to each other, but also it's quite an emotional time, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I've been out there today myself and talking to people, and everybody is sad. Everybody feels that they've lost somebody, and I think it's a big part of the country that we've lost. I think we're going to go on to better things, if I'm being honest now. I really do. I think I think Charles is stepping up to the mark, and like yourself, I've met him a few times, and I think the guy is great what he does, and. He's been in an apprenticeship for 70 years learning the job.
Wouldn't take as long at Pimlico Plumbers, would it?
No, not at all. But I think it's going to be great, and I think it's really going to. We need to unite now and really move forward. And
so you feel optimistic about where we're going to go from here?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to go a lot better. I really do. I think that fresh blood there, and obviously someone quite a bit younger, and he's got lots of ideas. He's very creative, and he's very much into helping people and certainly getting youngsters into work. I've worked with him on the Prince's Trust in the past.
Yeah, I know you have. Yeah.
And he's so devoted to it, and I feel he's going to apply a lot of that into what's going to go on out there. As you know, I got OBE from him, so. To actually have met him on that occasion was unbelievable, and I've also met him a few times through the Prince's Trust, and he's so switched on, the guy. He's so switched on, and he's up for the job, and I really think that I think we've got to turn a minus into a plus here, but. On saying that, I've just visited a couple of countries, Bali, Dubai, and. Everybody's talking about the Queen. Everybody is it's very sad about it,
But Charlie Mullins says, God save the King, and he's going to be a good king.
Undoubtedly. I mean, he will take us to the next level, undoubtedly on that. We're a great country anyhow, and I think this is just going to prove the point. So, good luck, Charlie.
I tell you what, Charlie, I love the optimism. We need a bit of cheering up at the moment because we're in mourning. Thank you.
Thank you.
For giving us your thoughts. Now, what's the reaction been in America? Well, I'm joined now by Stephen Yates, National Security Advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. Stephen, welcome. We have been very touched in this country that President Biden announced that the flags would be flown at half-mast on government buildings, military buildings, until sunset on the day of the funeral. So we're very touched and very moved by all of that, and tributes paid by former presidents, including Donald Trump, who did it on this very show. But when we read the New York Times, we're seeing an endless, poisonous, anti-British, anti-monarchist, endless, it seems like an endless dialogue they're having with their readers. Why is it some parts of the US establishment seem to hate the UK?
Well, Nigel, I mean, first, I would also send deep gratitude to Her Majesty the Queen for, on 9/11, breaking with protocol and precedent and having the national anthem of the United States of America played in the UK. There are a lot of Americans who have very warm feelings and very fond memories. And actually, the U.S.-UK relationship is one of the better examples of the world of countries who at one time may have come to blows, but now are the closest of allies when our interests converge, and have very fond feelings that way. With regard to this part of our culture that seems, it's not just anti-UK, it's also anti-American in a lot of ways. The New York Times famously has this project that wants to call all the principles of our nation's founding illegitimate, and they don't actually seek equality or opportunity. They seek to tear everything down. And so it is incredibly sad that at moments that should be unifying, after all, Queen Elizabeth had an immense tenure of leadership, and I don't think anyone can reasonably question what she walked into and inherited at that time and what she has left to the British people and the allies of the British people is amazingly improved. So these sad souls in the New York Times and the mainstream media and some parts of social media, they, I think, are just against the principles of civilization that we believe in and we celebrate. We here at the America First Policy Institute celebrate 1776. The New York Times does not.
No, Stephen, that's very useful because we've been looking at this and feeling it was uniquely anti-British, but they're just anti-everything the Western world stands for. That's useful. Now, President Biden is, of course, coming. He's coming to the state funeral, this extraordinary event that will take place on Monday morning in London. Yet, there is a former president who had a genuine affection for the Queen. I know that because he told me about it repeatedly. And somehow Donald Trump and other former presidents aren't coming. What's the deal here?
Well, it's very sad that there wouldn't be more inclusion because you're quite right. It's absolutely genuine, and it is, in fact, well known that President Trump had a very warm and friendly relationship with Her Majesty. His visit to the UK was was a tremendous highlight of his tenure. And it's a sad representation of the United States to have those other leaders excluded from the conversation. Of course, we defer to the British government, the British people, who they choose to invite. I'm not in on whether invitations were extended. Our current leader is slightly jealous of what other people's attention might be. Frankly, when Donald Trump visited the UK, he was in many ways received better than when he would go to New York.
Yeah, interesting. Stephen Yates, Senior Fellow at the America First Policy Institute, thank you for giving us your thoughts from the other side of the pond and cheering us up that actually the New York Times aren't just anti-British, they're anti pretty much everybody. Well, we are witnessing the most astonishing security and policing operation I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. I may be wrong. Maybe Peter Blexley, former Scotland Yard detective, will correct me, but all I can tell you is everything I can see thus far, Peter, it's been pretty much perfect, hasn't it?
It's gone very well so far. Yeah. And let's all keep everything firmly crossed that lasts beyond the funeral on Monday. The scale of this operation is simply vast, and that's just what we see. I have an expression that this security operation stretches actually from the sewers to the skies and beyond. Literally. Because it simply does, and so much of it is unseen. And the preparations that are currently going on for the arrival of so many heads of state.
We just talked about Biden, but of course they're coming from all over the world, aren't they?
Indeed, and of course President Biden will bring his own armed detail.
Well, this is a debate, isn't it? Is he going to bring the beast on the aeroplane, or is he going to be busted? I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, it's a huge headache, isn't it?
It's absolutely enormous. It's almost beyond the comprehension. But of course, it's not simply a policing operation. I've travelled from London Bridge via Westminster to here today, and of course you get to see the joined up working that's going on, including the armed services, all of them, Army, Navy, Air Force, volunteer sea cadets, for example.
And sort of 10,000 police roughly, we're told, is that?
Comfortably.
Or more.
Yeah, and so many of those have travelled from different parts of the UK. Yeah. It's what they call mutual aid. So many of them packed their kit bags some nights ago and are staying in hotels. I've been in a hotel and spotted, of course, a detail of cops there.
Well, it takes one to know one,
Yeah. Mind you, at that hotel, I had one cup of coffee, which cost me £5.62. Now, I suspect policemen being on their wages, they will have gone down the road and bought a jar of coffee.
So far, so good. Huge operation. You can literally see, as I talk to you, the queue coming there over Lambeth Bridge. It's all been beautifully done. One or two minor protests, nothing serious. Pete, I just want to ask you, as somebody who's worn uniform and served this country and served the monarch, how do you feel? How has this affected you the last week?
Well, I swore an oath of allegiance, like every police officer does when they joined, and mine, of course, was to Queen Elizabeth. Many police officers, especially those involved in this operation, are deeply touched by what they're doing, and they take the responsibility of being a part of this operation very, very seriously, because, like so many cops, when I was serving, we had a commissioner or a chief constable that you were ultimately answerable to, but many police officers
Not the same thing,
saw
is
the
it?
Queen as the big boss.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've met soldiers and retired police in the line, and they call her the boss, and you do too. Peter Blexley, thank you for sharing your thoughts on what thus far, it has to be said, has been a truly remarkable operation. And people are joyous, people are happy, and we even had the eco-zealot saying he didn't think protest on Monday was appropriate. Well, those of you watching on television can see these pictures as people go past the Queen's coffin, and they look very reverential, some making the signs of the cross, some bowing their heads, but there are others. Now it's dark, but they're still queuing up. Paul Hawkins on the embankment. Let's go back to you.
Yeah, and at the moment the queue time is 8.5 hours. It stretches almost 5 miles back to Southwark Park. You wanted to find someone who had come from an even longer distance away than Mauritius, you were saying earlier. Just found a man who has come all the way from Australia. He hadn't slept for 37 hours. As soon as he found out the news about the Queen, hopped on the first plane, came here. He's now gone and crossed over the bridge onto the other side. But we can speak to some ladies who've come from fairly far away. Whereabouts have you guys come from?
We've come from Hertfordshire, from Tring in Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire, and yourself, man?
I'm from Swansea, South Wales.
OK, not too bad. And yourself?
From Tring with Sarah.
From Tring. First of all, why did you feel that you had to make this journey? We can move as the queue goes.
Thank you. For me, it was the Queen. I think we didn't deserve her for as long as we've had her. She's done such an impeccable service for us to be able to come here, and also, to be honest, it's my nan's birthday and she absolutely adored the Queen. My nan's passed away, so it's something I can give back to her as well as seeing it, so a bit of history.
That's really interesting. So connected to your nan then, you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, she loved the Queen, absolutely did. Yeah, so really tough to be here.
Yeah, and what about yourself?
Well, I just think she's, served us really well, and she hasn't put a foot wrong, and it's an honour to come, really, and, pay our respects.
Yeah. And what's it been like queuing for this length of time? You started, was it 2 o'clock this afternoon?
Yeah, about 2:30, yeah.
Do you know what? It's actually been very well done. It's been quite quick. There was one section where it was a little bit slower, but all in all, everybody's amazing. I've never met these people before, but feel like I've got friends and stuff like that there. So it's really, really nice camaraderie, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is it? What about British and queuing? Because we often say it's a really British thing, but you do see other nationalities queuing. Why do we think it's so British?
I think we do it so well. If we can do it, we can do it well.
As we've shown today, isn't it, in the last couple of days.
Have you seen anyone trying to queue jump?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you really?
Yeah.
And what happened?
We sent them back.
Band, yeah.
You sent them back? You dealt with them, did you?
Say, you haven't got a band. She went to the front and said, tell them to go to the back.
I love that. It's that British sense of injustice, isn't it? Thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, the atmosphere in the queue at the moment, it's actually quite jovial, given the reason why people are queuing, but it kind of gets people through those very long hours spent now in the dark by the banks of the River Thames. And I'm sure it won't be like that when they get to the front and they file up to pay their respects to the catafalque.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. Quite extraordinary. No one queues like the British. They're wonderful people out there. I was there yesterday. I was there again today. They are the absolute best of British. It makes me proud to be British. It gives me great hope for the future of our country under King Charles III. Enough from me. I'm back with you on Monday. I'll be covering the funeral with GB News throughout the day. I'll be doing a 2-hour special on the evening. But for now, I'm handing over to Mark Dolan.
So much. It's Mark Dolan in for Mark Stein. A busy hour to come. A number of Tory MPs absolutely outraged that China are going to be invited to the Queen's funeral on Monday. Don't forget, they gave the world COVID, effectively bankrupting the West with the lockdowns that followed. Plus, they're torturing their own people. Should China be present and represented at Monday's funeral? We'll speak to Tim Loughton, Conservative MP, who's on a watch list created by Beijing. He's been banned from entering China himself, and he joins us in a couple of minutes' time. Also, what about these attacks on the Queen, her legacy, and on Britain from woke American journalists? I'll be dealing with that in my Big Opinion monologue. Plus, I'll speak to the renowned best-selling author and broadcaster AJ Rice live from Washington. Plus, Jenny Bond on the royals, and in particular, a break for King Charles. That's right, he's taking a pause from royal duties in advance of Monday's important occasion. So lots to get through. I'll see you after the weather.